What in the world? Did I put in the wrong coordinates? Naruto muttered to himself when he saw the desolate scenery outside, through the pilot cabin's window. It was a scene extremely similar to the one that he had seen half a year ago when he went to the Rao system at the request of Superman and saved the young Argonian girl, Kara Zor-El. Countless asteroids littered the space where the planet Tamaran should have been. Computer, confirm our location. Naruto ordered. At his request, the large screen of the computer showed a very detailed map of the Milky Way galaxy, a map that proceeded to be zoomed in rapidly. It took just a few seconds for the map to be zoomed in until only a planetary system was displayed on the screen, the Vega system. On it, an inverted green triangle was blinking above the planet Tamaran. But when looking through the windows of the ship, Tamaran was nowhere to be seen. Countless chunks of rocks and a large amount of debris was all that was left of the previously flourishing planet. Although Coriander did not understand the Amerasian language that Naruto used to interact with the AI of the ship, it did not take a genius to understand what was going on when she saw their location on the map of the Vega system and the massive asteroids outside. Tears welled up in her eyes and she started crying bitterly. From someone who had had everything, Coriander had lost everything. Initially, a princess of the royal family and the next in line to become the ruler of her planet, she was sold out by her own parents, at a very frail age, for the sake of the greater good, for peace. She became a slave and she even lost her innocence when one of the Gordanian jailers raped her. She had murdered that Gordanian in revenge later on, but the damage done to her was obviously not repaired. Instead, things only continued to spiral downwards from there. After killing her jailers and attempting to escape, the Gordanians thought of her as too dangerous and sold her to their allies, the Scion monarchy. In the following years, she had endured all kinds of torture and experiments at the hands of the Pshins. And now, even her homeworld had been destroyed. Coriander let herself down on her knees and sobbed in her hands. Over the course of his long life, after witnessing the death of many worlds, including the apocalypse of his own, Naruto inadvertently became detached from the world around him. He would enjoy the moment and have fun, but he always kept other people and places at an arm's length, never letting anyone in his heart except for his lifelong friend, Kyuubi. However, at that moment, hearing the girl's anguished cries cracked his heart. Do you understand pain a little now? If you don't share someone's pain, you can never understand them. Even to this day, almost a century after his fateful battle against the leader of the Akatsuki, Uzumaki Nagato, Naruto could vividly remember every single moment of it, every single word of his former enemy. Nagato was the one person that had marked him the most, even more than his mentor, the Toad Sage. Because the older Naruto grew, the more he realized the naivete of Jiraiya's dream and the harsh truth in Pain's words. Naruto lowered himself to Coriander's level and put his hand gently on her shoulder. I'm sorry for your loss. Her situation hit very close to home for Naruto. He may have not had it as bad as Coriander, to be enslaved and raped by his captors, but, just like her, he had also been sacrificed by his own father for the sake of the village, for the greater good. Betrayed by their family for the sake of peace. And just like her, he had also lost his homeworld. He understood all too well her pain. And that was why his passive attitude cracked when faced with her cries. It was just a small show of compassion on Naruto's side, but for the crying Coriander, it was the drop that spilt the glass. She lunged at him and her arms wrapped around his back tightly as she started to cry out loud in his chest. I have nothing left. Nothing, Coriander said through her tears. What could he say to comfort the young woman desperately crying in his arms? That things have to get worse before they can get better? Or that she's at the lowest point in her life and that from now on, things can only go up? In his mind, such cheap lip service was disgusting. He chose to stay silent, only offering her a shoulder to cry on. Naruto let out a drawn-out sigh of despondency. In this dog-eat-dog world, being weak is almost like a sin. But even if you're powerful, you can only guarantee your own survival. For all my power, I could never protect everything. On the grand scale of the universe, one man is nothing. In front of a reality-bender god, even I would be in danger. Against the all-powerful force of the void, in front of the universe's power, I am but a speck of dust. There were some groups and organizations like the Green Lantern Corps that tried to uphold peace and justice in the universe, but they were only minimally successful and their death toll was very high. Despite their efforts, intergalactic wars still raged on. Greedy dictators took over planets and enslaved their inhabitants, and mad conquerors destroyed everything in their path. And that was only on a large scale, to say nothing about the countless conflicts that took place every day on every planet. Armed conflicts, killings, kidnappings, physical and sexual abuse, torturing, human trafficking, etc. I've fought against evil for decades, even after coming into this new world. But no matter what I did, it always came back. No matter how much I stepped on it, the darkness crawled back, like a cockroach. Yin and yang, evil and good, darkness and light. Supposedly, for life to exist, there has to be a balance between these two opposing sides. But where is the light when I can see only darkness? Who is the light and what does it do to stop the ever-growing darkness? Where are all the benevolent gods that so many people worship and pray to? Naruto had no wild thoughts about him bearing the role of the light. He was but a tired old man, a lone man. He had been the so-called child of the prophecy, but he had still failed at protecting his own homeworld. If he could not protect his loved ones and his home, he had no illusions about being able to protect the universe at large. His power may have grown by a lot, but just like his powers, the strength of the enemy had increased just as much if not more. Fighting against the darkness is like fighting a many-headed monster, which, each time a neck is severed, sprouts a head even fiercer and cleverer than before. Darkness is ever evolving, ever spreading and indestructible. That was the conclusion that he had reached after more than 100 years of life. That the laws of the universe made it so there would always be darkness. Darkness would never be destroyed for as long as sentient living beings existed. And this thought filled him with helplessness. Over the years, it made him lose much of the drive that he used to have in his early teen years when he wanted to protect every innocent being, regardless of whether they were friends or strangers. The despair of knowing that no matter what he did, darkness would never be extinguished. It slowly made him become detached from the world around him. But there were moments like the present one when he came in contact with people whose pain he could relate to. People like Superman, people like Coriander. Those moments always shook his cold heart and perturbed his inner peace and calm. "What are you going to do now, Naruto?" Kyuubi asked quietly. After taking the sleeping Tamarini and princess to one of the rooms in the ship's living quarters, Man and Fox were now back in the control room, alone. "I'm going to turn in Vandal Savage to the Pshins first. You do realize that this bounty was most likely a highly elaborated trap from the beginning, right?" Kyuubi asked again. "Oh, I am betting on that," Naruto said darkly. From the moment that he saw that Tamaran was destroyed, he realized that Kyuubi's hunch about Rui not betraying them was right all along. As one of the top information brokers in the Milky Way galaxy, there was no way that Rui Nok did not know that Korion's parents were dead or that Tamaran had been destroyed. "That rat betrayed us," Kyuubi said. "Most likely, he was paid by the Pshins to deliver us to him. I can totally see those crazed scientists wanting to dissect you and me to see what makes us tick and what gives us our power. And that scum of a rat even sold his wife and kids for money, to say nothing of his willingness to sell you." Naruto nodded his head and added, "The bounty to save the Princess of Tamaran was probably just to distract us and give more of a reason and make sure we entered one of the Pshins' bases." Cold laughter came from him as he said, "But I will play their game. Hee hee." At his different than usual demeanor, Kyuubi jumped off Naruto's shoulder and then stood in front of him. He looked him in the eye and said meaningfully, "Are we going all out?" Naruto chuckled softly. "You know me so well, Kurama." As they were speaking, over a dozen space warp tunnels appeared within 200 miles of their ship. The radar of the ship went crazy and alarms started blaring as multiple hostile targets appeared within its scope. From those space warp tunnels, almost 40 frigate-class and even 8 galleon-class warships came out. "I hope whatever the Pshins had bribed the rat with was worth trading his life for, because I'll rip him to shreds after I am done here," Naruto growled. It was not his normal voice, it was deeper and it sounded demonic. The nails of his fingers had turned into claws, and if it had not been for his masking jutsu that made his hair look golden yellow, it could have been seen that his hair had become blood red, compared to the regular strawberry blonde from before. Under his mask, his canines grew into fangs as well, and his already thick whisker-like marks became darker and deeper. A beeping sound was being made by the computer, showing an incoming transmission, but a clawed finger pressed on a key to reject it. He did not need to hear what the incoming fleet of warships had to say to know their intentions. On the large screen of his computer, he could see the footage recorded by the AI. The ships that had appeared on their radar carried the emblems of the Scion Monarchy and the Gordanian Empire. "They think they can trap and capture us like a beast? Come, Kurama. It's time we reminded the world what happens after provoking a slumbering beast." The fox met the man's fist in a fist bump and, as the two of them looked at each other, bloodthirsty grins crept on their faces. In the next moment, their silhouettes teleported out of the ship. Hundreds of ships were firing laser beams at an enormous monstrosity. A fission-type missile exploded against the torso of the beast and an enormous mushroom-like cloud of fire rose for tens of miles into the sky, even puncturing the stratosphere of the planet. A roar of pain came from the beast as a patch of its chest was burned off. "This isn't right. This wasn't in our calculations. Our data was wrong," a frail-looking green lizard man yelled hysterically. They had not known that the tiny pet of the mercenary they wanted to capture would transform into a world-destroying behemoth. That fission-type missile was the strongest weapon of mass destruction they could use without endangering the very core of the planet their race was living on. But that weapon that could lay waste to an entire nation had only scraped some skin off the beast's chest. The one that looked like the commander of the lizardmen screamed, "Everyone, evacuate the planet. Prepare the Star Destroyers and blow up everything to dust. Blow them all up along with the planet." His adjutants could not help yelling out in disbelief. "But sir, our home and everything we've worked so hard for will." The adjutant, however, did not finish speaking when the sky suddenly seemed to turn black. His words died out in his throat when an enormous sphere of purple-black energy cast a shadow over the capital city of the planet. Boom! A cataclysmic explosion boomed. A white light blinded every living being in range, and the shockwave it generated deafened everyone a second later. The energy shield that should have been capable of defending even against a shot from a star-destroying particle cannon was obliterated. 20 galleon-type warships equipped with star-destroying cannons flew in front of the enormous beast. But despite the destructive might of their warships, everyone on board trembled at the sight of the colossal beast standing ahead of them. They have never seen anything as monstrous as that before. Blood-red fur, over 1,500 feet in height and over 2,500 feet in length. At its back, 9 enormous tails created tornadoes just with simple twitches. It was a gargantuan 9-tailed demon fox. "Kurama! Sea of Fire!" Naruto shouted. He was on top of the enormous fox's head, but he was so small that he could not be seen from outside. The fur of the beast's head was even taller than him. He was no bigger than a fly was on a regular fox. He sat on his knees, with both hands pressed down on the head of Kyubi. A massive amount of chakra was being passed on from him to the demon below through his hands. The titanic demon roared. A conic breath of fire covered the entire sky. Like the furious waves of an ocean, the stream of fire obliterated everything in its path. The several miles-long star-destroying warships were reduced to liquid metal in mere seconds. Flames hotter than the sun melted everything. It was hell. And in the middle of that hell, demonic laughter shook the skies. Waha! Die! Die! Kyubi reveled in the feeling of power, in the slaughter. Power like he had never wielded back in the elemental nations. A power not any lower than that of the 10-tailed beast, a god. He did not have many opportunities to let loose like that. When Naruto had unsealed him from his body, he was in his 40s. It took Naruto nearly 3 decades of studying the art of Fuinjutsu before he became proficient and confident enough to undo the seal without killing himself in the process. But after 40 years spent locked by the Shinigami's seal, much of Kyubi's chakra had seeped into Naruto, fusing with him. That was why Naruto's whisker marks were so thick and dark now by default, and that was also why his golden blonde hair had become a strawberry blonde, almost red. Before unsealing Kyubi, Man and Baijuo had been very close to the point where they would completely fuse into one single entity. When Naruto finally unsealed him, the Baijuo lost a part of himself in the process. In the present, Kyubi could not regenerate his chakra like before, simply by drawing it in from the outside world. That's why he had become a glutton that would eat 24/7. He converted the physical energy from anything he ate into chakra. That was also why he took on the appearance of a tiny fox cub most of the time, to preserve his energy. But when Kyubi actually let loose and put to use all the chakra that he had accumulated over many years, this was the result, a might far surpassing the original level of power given to him by his creator, Rikudo Sennin. Unlike before, there was no real limit to how much chakra he could store. Theoretically, with enough time and chakra, he could become invincible. He was no longer just a demonic fox. In the present, Kyubi was like a god, a demonic fox god. Prepare one final attack. Destroy their planet, Naruto said. His ruthless words would have shocked his younger self back in the elemental nations. But Naruto was no stranger to the atrocities that this race of degenerates had committed over their millions of years of existence. There was not a single innocent among them. When one wants to cut the weeds, they have to pull them from their roots. Complete annihilation. Kyubi's booming evil laughter subsided. He had never fully lost himself in his lust for carnage and slaughter. He had not forgotten even for a second that his current power was possible only because of the chakra that Naruto was pouring into him, a chakra that Naruto absorbed from nature, on a planet even more polluted and infected than the Earth. "Are you sure, Naruto?" Kyuubi asked worriedly. "Just do it," Naruto said grimly. "I'm only acting as a conductor, not as the engine. I'm just pouring chakra into you instead of using it myself. The damage this infected natural energy does to me is not as bad as if I was the one to use it and cast jutsus." Despite his words of reassurance, right at that moment, his mask cracked and dispersed into particles of light. His perfect chakra control was starting to slip up. His red hair came into view now that the mask no longer disguised it, and the appearance of his face too. He was horrible to look at. Had Kyuubi been able to see how Naruto looked at that moment, he would have stopped his rampage in a heartbeat. Purple-black blood was flowing from a corner of his mouth. Most of the skin on his face was a mixture of dark violet and black, and he lost the sight in one of his eyes after half of his face had been petrified. It was a clear sign of nature energy poisoning. If he did not stop drawing on nature's energy very soon, at this rate, his entire body would turn into stone, becoming a statue just like the many other people before him who had lost control of their senjutsu. Kyuubi did not have a wishy-washy nature. He was aware of the dangers Naruto faced the longer he kept using this infected natural energy. So he did not hesitate. Cupping his fists together, he slammed them against the ground with all the strength that his gigantic body was capable of. A huge crack appeared in the ground, splitting the crust of the planet open for dozens of miles. Then, opening his enormous mouth wide open, the largest Baijudama Kyuubi had ever cast slowly took form in front of him. It was even larger than his half-a-mile-long body. At last, he fired it into the huge crack that he had made in the crust of the planet. Despite how violent and powerful the following explosion was, it was not enough to destroy an entire planet by itself, but the chain of reactions that it produced made up for it. The aftershocks and the rest of the berserk chakra resulted from the tailed beast bomb's explosion reached the very core of the planet. Only a few seconds later, terrible earthquakes shook the entire surface of the planet and volcanoes started showing signs of erupting very soon, from everywhere. It was the end of the world. After a few hours, the planet was going to explode from within. "Make yourself tiny, Kurama. Quickly," Naruto said with difficulty because the petrifying process was advancing further than before and even started to turn to stone his mouth too. The over 1,500 feet tall and over 2,500 feet long demonic fox god decreased in size at a very fast speed until it became no larger than a horse. Kyuubi had realized that Naruto was in a critical condition. He made himself small enough for Naruto to be able to teleport them both, but also big enough for him to carry his wounded friend. In a flash of yellow and red light, the two of them appeared 4,000 miles away, in the exosphere of the planet, aboard their invisible ship. "Naruto, you." The fox could not continue speaking. Except for his right eye, all of Naruto's face had turned into stone along with his left hand and leg. He was petrified in a kneeling position, bent over, the position he had had while pouring his chakra into Kyuubi. Naruto weakly raised his still working hand and put it on Kyuubi's chest. His index finger drew invisible lines on his chest like he was writing. "Don't worry, I'll be okay?" Kyuubi read by imagining what the lines Naruto drew with his finger would be in kanji. Naruto made a weak thumbs-up gesture and then proceeded to write again on the fox's chest. "Call Lobo. Return favor. Rat bastard. Warp ship. Earth." Naruto once again made a thumbs-up gesture to show that Kyuubi got it right. After that, his only remaining eye closed. He lost his consciousness. While Naruto was unconscious, on the brink of death, and Kyuubi was fumbling with the computer of the ship to activate the space warp, the rest of the universe was in an uproar. The two of them had no idea about how far-reaching were the consequences of their outrageous display of power and ruthless violence. They were in every discussion of the upper echelons of all the powerful forces of the galaxy, and not only. The well-informed and powerful organizations in the entire known universe were shocked because the Pshins were one of the oldest races of the universe, almost as old as the Guardians of the Green Lantern Corps who had created them. No self-respecting interstellar power could claim that they had not heard of the Pshins and their cruel dominion over the lawless Vega system. However, such an old, powerful, and technologically advanced race had been massacred to the last individual in the span of a day. In the Vega system, the Gordanian Empire's ruling body was in a panic. Their allies and masters, the Pshins, possessed far superior technology and means of destruction and/or defense. But they had been eradicated in only one day. Hundreds of thousands of Gordanians evacuated Karna planet in the following weeks, running for their lives. In contrast to the Gordanians, billions of other people in the Vega system were celebrating the day of liberation. The Pshins who had taken over the entire system were no more. Countless people came out in the streets and celebrated together, regardless of race or nationality when the news of Pshin's massacre came out. On Thanagar, the members of the ruling council of the Thanagrians were having difficulty to contain smiles on their faces. For generations, they had been at war against the Gordanians and, as of late, they were even starting to get pushed back by the flying lizardmen. Although the Gordanians had not been destroyed along with the Pshins, the Thanagrians were very happy with the outcome. Without the Pshins' technology to support them from the back, the Gordanian Empire's defeat was only a matter of time. On Earth, Jon Stewart had a look of disbelief on his face when Salak, the administrator of the Green Lantern Corps, sent him, and the rest of the Green Lanterns too, a shocking report. The Pshins of the Vega system have been massacred. An intergalactic mercenary, Uzumaki Naruto, also known as Caterpillar, and his companion, QB, a demon, have destroyed the Pshins' planet and the 6 moons that they had colonized. The Guardians have classified the 2 of them as universal-level threats. All Green Lanterns in possession of more information about these 2 subjects are to report to OA immediately. On New Genesis and Apocalypse, Highfather and Darkseid, the rulers of the 2 factions of the New Gods, were both frowning, though because of different reasons. The Vega system was a place that even Darkseid had not attempted to conquer until then because he recognized the threat that the Pshins' technology posed. Darkseid did not like the sudden apparition of such a wild and violent dark horse, one that annihilated an entire race in one day. New Genesis and the Justice League were annoying enough as it was. He did not like the thought of such a dangerous variable popping up in his plans of world domination. As for Highfather, he went into a deep meditation, trying to make contact with the source. He was worried about such a powerful character being evil. His adopted son, Orion, the most valiant warrior of the gods from New Genesis, was getting ready to leave their world and make contact with the dangerous mercenary and his beast, to ascertain their intentions and thoughts. On the planet Amarak, a beautiful red-haired woman shot up from her throne, her face betraying the shock she was feeling. She was Maxima, the Queen of Amarak. A series of contrasting emotions flashed in her eyes. At first anger, then infatuation, and then anger again. She had met the mercenary and his fox a few years before. Infatuated with how powerful he was, she had tried to kidnap him and make him her husband by force. But not only that he rejected her, he even stole one of their most advanced stealth-oriented warships before escaping from the planet. She had not heard anything about him for years, but when she finally heard some news about him again, it was about him annihilating a race as powerful as the Pshins. Her infatuation levels skyrocketed. Flushed with excitement and desire, and with her previous anger nearly forgotten, she immediately ordered her subordinates to search for more information about his whereabouts. She was definitely going to hunt him down and make him her husband. Lastly, a yellow power ring took flight from Quird, in the antimatter universe. Its destination was precise: the Earth, in the Sol system, Milky Way galaxy. Target, QB, the 9-tailed demonic fox god. Yes, a burrito with extra cheese. Yes, the top floor. The name is Diana Prince. Placing her smartphone on the coffee table in her spacious living room, Wonder Woman focused on drying off her wet hair with a head towel. She had just come out of the shower, proof of that also being that there was only a white towel wrapped around her torso. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang and she left her head towel on the backrest of the sofa as she sat up and went to open the door. "Good evening, ma'am. Here's your..." The delivery boy's words died in his throat 2 seconds after that door opened. "Good evening. Is there a problem?" Wonder Woman asked, completely oblivious. "And no," he said, his face quickly becoming as red as an apple. Long black hair, wet, barely out of the shower, striking blue eyes, defined cheekbones, full lips, and a body even a model would be envious of. A body wrapped in only a white towel that strained to contain her voluptuous breasts and left her soft shoulders and strong yet still feminine thighs and legs bare. In truth, the costume she wore on a daily basis in public while fighting crime did not cover much more than the bath towel, but there was a stark difference in the atmosphere surrounding her at that time and in the present. Till the very end of the transaction, the delivery boy fumbled very flusteredly. He almost dropped the package with food when he handed it to her and, after getting her money, he bolted away, forgetting to give her the change. But he turned around after a few seconds, his face even redder than before, boiling, upon realizing his mistake. Wonder Woman giggled softly. It's alright, you can keep the change, thank you and have a nice evening, she said with a smile and waved in goodbye. She may have been oblivious in the first few seconds, but Wonder Woman was not stupid. She realized the reason for the boy's embarrassment. After starting to live as Diana Prince among regular people, she began to understand how big was the effect of her physical appearance on most men. What I don't get is why almost everyone acts like that when I'm Diana Prince, but nobody shows any reaction in front of Wonder Woman. Scenes like the previous one when men became starstruck were not really that common, hence her amusement, but it was a fact that dozens of men had tried to hit on Diana Prince during the past few months since she adopted the civilian identity, yet hardly anyone seemed to like Wonder Woman as a woman. Maybe it's because Wonder Woman looks like an untouchable being, powerful and dangerous, while Diana Prince is a normal but attractive and rich human girl? What Wonder Woman was completely unaware of was that her hero persona was way more popular with men, and not only, than her civilian identity. It was just that nobody would dare to express their honest thoughts in front of someone who could bend steel with her bare hand and throw cars around like they were pebbles. If she had browsed the internet for even as little as 2 minutes, typing Wonder Woman in the search engine, she would have seen how different the situation was. But she had never done that. She did not know about the hundreds of blogs dedicated to worshipping Wonder Woman or about the existence of websites like Rule 34. With these idle thoughts, Wonder Woman came back to the living room and, after plopping herself down on the sofa, she grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. Then, she opened the paper bag and grabbed the burrito from it. She took a huge, very unladylike bite from her burrito and an expression of bliss appeared on her face. What looked like an enormous ship of alien invaders appeared above Jump City. Wonder Woman put her burrito down for a moment with a dissatisfied expression and changed the channel. Everyone is asking the same question: who is the newly emerged hero? The princess' expression darkened and she changed the channel once more. The Justice League has yet to release a statement in regards to the previous incident, so we don't know what exactly had transpired. The host of the show on TV said, but one of his partners interrupted him. Nonsense. It's as clear as day that he's a hero. Everyone saw and heard that hologram of the spaceship's commander. Those alien freaks would have destroyed the entire city if they hadn't found their allegedly dangerous prisoner. This new hero saved millions of people that night in Jump City and with no collateral damage at that. If that ain't what being a hero means, then I don't know what is. Her face now scrunched up in annoyance, Wonder Woman changed the channel again. It was a music channel this time. A large group of women dressed in a bikini and other types of promiscuous outfits were dancing on the beach while 2 men were singing. Bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks, bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks, lick on these nuts and suck the dick. 1. Suddenly, the sound of a crash was heard when the remote control was slammed into the large flat screen of the TV, cracking it beyond recognition. A small vein was pulsating on the temple of Wonder Woman. Men. All men are the same, she said in anger. But she closed her eyes and breathed out in an attempt to regain her composure. No, there are good people among men too, she conceded in her mind once she calmed herself down a little. It had been almost 1 year since she had come to the man's world, and she had seen in her fellow members of the Justice League that men were not all that bad. At least not all were as bad as she had been taught to believe. There were also brave, honest, noble and self-sacrificing characters among them. But they are a minority. The average men out there. She let out a long sigh and massaged her temples with her hands. Since the Justice League's clash against the alien Mercenary in Jump City and the Gordanian ships following destruction, the Earth had been thrown into an uproar. Her level of stress and her worries were off the charts. Videos of the incident in Jump City spread on the internet like wildfire. The videos did not contain scenes of Naruto's clash against the Justice League because all the civilians evacuated the area after Coriander went on a rampage, but they all contain the scene of a man glowing in yellow and red light, almost like an angel, annihilating the enormous half-a-mile-long alien spaceship. In the general population's eyes, he was a newly emerged hero. They had no idea that he had fought against the Justice League at first. That said, the entire Justice League was very rattled by the incident. Batman hid in his Batcave and has not spoken to anyone ever since. Jon Stewart was summoned to Green Lantern Corps HQ in an urgent fashion, and Wonder Woman herself just stayed at home all day, in her apartment, eating junk food and hiding from the crazed reporters. The rest of the Justice League did the same too, but after seeing the huge disparity of power between them and the alien, Wonder Woman, in particular, was almost starting to question her abilities. Of what use had it been that she had trained for thousands of years as an Amazon when someone could just obliterate everything in their path with a snap of their fingers? But she was stopped from continuing that line of thought when the doorbell rang again. Who could it be at this hour? It was already past 10 p.m. It was night. Furthermore, she had no real friends or social life outside the Justice League, and if they wanted to contact her, Martian Manhunter would have done it through their comms or even telepathy. There was no need to come all the way to her apartment. But when she looked through the door's peephole, a startled cry came out of her mouth. Mother? Long blonde hair, blue eyes, and wearing a white robe and a golden tiara on her head, it was none other than Hippolyta, the Queen of the Amazons and Wonder Woman's mother. We haven't seen each other in so long. Don't I get a hug from my daughter? Hippolyta said. Wonder Woman embraced her mother tightly and she took her hands in hers after she broke the hug. What brings you here? Does a mother need a reason to visit her child? Hippolyta asked teasingly. You've never visited me before and Wonder Woman trailed off. For a little while, mother and daughter became silent. Due to their laws, as the Queen of the Amazons, Hippolyta had had to exile her own daughter even despite the fact that she had broken those laws for the sake of saving their lives. Because of that, Wonder Woman could not visit her mother and her fellow Amazon sisters even if she wanted. Yesterday night, while I was in meditation, I sensed an incredible magic power. It was like the power of a god. I've come to the man's world because I was worried about you. We met a very powerful foe. The strongest we've ever faced. He defeated the entire Justice League effortlessly. We could not do anything against him. If he had been evil, I don't know how many of us would have been alive now. Hearing Diana's words, Hippolyta took her in her arms and embraced her again. My little stars and sun, she said lovingly. Mother, Diana also said and hugged her back. They were warriors, born for battle, and they were both several thousand years old. But when it was just the two of them, Diana and Hippolyta were not Wonder Woman and the Queen of the Amazons but just a daughter and a mother that loved each other dearly. It's time I told you the truth, something I've hidden from you since forever, Hippolyta said, and then she took out a pendant from her neck. An incantation spoken in an ancient Greek language came out of her mouth and the pendant started glowing with dark blue light, coating the entire living room with its color. This is a very powerful spell, one that was cast upon this medallion by your father himself. For a short while, no one will be able to see or hear what is happening in this room. My father? Diana asked in a strange voice. What do you mean? You said you sculpted me from clay and the gods of Olympus themselves blessed me with life and their powers. Oh, the gods did bless you with their powers after you were born. But they did not give you life. I gave you life, together with your father. This, Wonder Woman was at a loss, unable to find her words. She was almost 3,000 years old. For 3 millennia, she believed that she had been made from clay. That was also why her devotion to the gods was so intense. Because she believed that everything she was because of the gods. But now, her mother suddenly told her that had been a lie from the beginning. Why did you lie to me? All this time, Diana said in agitation. I did it to protect you. To protect you from those that would have wanted to kill you if they had known about your true origins. Who would have wanted to kill me? Who would have even been able to? The Amazons are under the protection of the gods, Diana said. You and I both saw how much protection the gods gave us when Faust had turned everyone to stone. The gods. They do not care about the Amazons that way. We are expendable, just tools that they can use as they see fit. If we broke, they would just create another set of tools to replace us. In front of the gods, mortals mean nothing. Mother! Wonder Woman shouted, scandalized. What Hippolyta had just said could very well be considered as blasphemy against the gods. It was the first time that Wonder Woman had ever seen her mother speak like that about their gods and wearing that expression of bitterness on her face. You've ever wondered why the Amazons were punished to guard the gates of Tartarus for eternity? Hippolyta asked. Was it not because you aided Hades and the Titans in their battle against the gods of Olympus? Diana replied. But why would Hades, Zeus' brother, try to plot against him by siding with the Titans? And why would we, the Amazons, support Hades in his rebellion? Do you really think I was so blindly in love with Hades that I just went along with whatever he wanted without questioning the fate of my people? Hippolyta continued to ask. Seeing her daughter falling silent, she continued. One day, Hades came home while I was bathing and he joined me in. Mother! Diana cried out, her cheeks instantly turning rosy in embarrassment. She did not want to hear any details about her mother's sex life. But Hippolyta continued unbothered by her daughter's protests. Like any other couple, we started to make love. But I noticed that the way he was kissing me was different from before. Hades was a gentle lover, very caring and conscious of my needs. But that day, he was acting strangely. Rougher, more dominant, more selfish. I did not like it. However, by the time I realized that something was terribly wrong, it was too late. He had already spilled his seed inside of me. Him being such a quick shot and then teleporting away immediately after that further cemented my suspicions. That man had not been Hades. It had been someone else. Don't tell me, Diana muttered with her hands covering her mouth in disbelief. It was not hard for her to guess what had actually happened. It had been Zeus all along. You know very well the history and how many women he had raped before. In my case, he had not dared to do it openly. He had disguised himself as Hades, who was my lover at that time. Naturally, I did not hide what happened from Hades. You can imagine his and my rage at Zeus. But we could not do anything against him. He is the king of gods for a reason. No one could ever defeat him, except for goddess Athena maybe, one day. Coincidentally, around at that time, the Titans waged war against Olympus. Hades jumped at the chance to get his revenge against Zeus. Though I hated Zeus too for what he did to me, I was reluctant to join him. As the leader of my people, I did not want the Amazons to be embroiled in a war of the gods. But he guilt-tripped me into accepting it, accusing me of colluding with Zeus behind his back. Zeus forcing himself on me that day, it had changed him. He became more taciturn, quick to anger, and always ready to explode. Hades became very different from the man I had once fallen in love with. As for the rest, it is as you know it. The Titans lost the war and Hades was exiled to Tartarus while the Amazons were punished to guard its gates for eternity for having sided with him. A poignant silence followed. I assume Hera would have wanted to kill me if she had known that Zeus cheated on her again? Diana asked. Yes. Hippolyta answered. But if Zeus has one quality, that is that he cares about his children. Together with great Athena, they made a plan. They gave me an enchanted necklace that hid my pregnancy and they also told me to sculpt a baby out of clay. When it was time for you to be born, they pretended to give life to that form of clay, knowing that, as the daughter of Zeus, your strength would far exceed that of your fellow Amazons. Great Athena sealed your powers. To remove any possibility of Hera becoming suspicious even of your sealed strength, Goddess Athena organized a birthday party for the newborn you, a party where she invited the rest of the gods to bless you. Goddess Athena blessed you with her wisdom. Goddess Demeter blessed you with her strength. Goddess Aphrodite blessed you with her beauty. God Hermes blessed you with his ability of flight and speed. Goddess Artemis blessed you to have unity with nature and wild beasts and affinity to fire. Goddess Hestia blessed you with the power to discern the truth. And now, the truth shall set you free. You are Diana, the princess of the Amazons, the daughter of Queen Hippolyta and the king of gods, Zeus. The sound of chains being snapped was heard and an aura of power and nobility burst out from Wonder Woman's body. Had it not been for the powerful spell coming off from the medallion that Zeus had enchanted, just that release of aura would have blasted the top floor of the building to dust. The spell will not hold on for too long, Diana, Hippolyta said urgently. Where are your bracelets? Put them on immediately. Though extremely bewildered by her mother's words and the massive changes she could feel taking place in her body, Diana automatically listened to her mother's words and tried to run to her bedroom where she had left her uniform. Wait, don't move away from this spell's range. Just tell me where they are and I'll get them for you. Not long after that, Hippolyta returned with the bracelets of submission and gave them to her daughter. After she put them around her wrists, Hippolyta said, unless it's a matter of life and death like it was 2 days ago, never take these off. They will continue to suppress and hide your true nature and powers as long as you wear them. Never tell of your identity to anyone, unless you don't have a choice. The moment you take them off, the gods will take notice of you and Hera will learn of your identity as well. An angry and jealous Hera is no less dangerous than her enraged husband. Looking at Diana, who was still silent and had a lost look in her eyes, Hippolyta took her once again in her arms and hugged her to her chest. I'm sorry I had to hide this from you for so long. If I hadn't been afraid I could lose you, I would have never told you the truth. I never cared about how powerful you could be while you were at my side. All I ever wanted was for you to be happy, to be safe and to feel loved. Diana could feel her mother's tears wetting the crook of her neck. She had never seen Hippolyta cry. She had never seen her as vulnerable as that before. Hippolyta broke the hug and she raised her hands to cup her daughter's cheeks, making it so their blue eyes locked on each other. Even though Zeus forced himself on me, I never regretted giving you birth, Diana. I swear this on the river Styx. You are my little stars and sun. You are the joy of my life, my beloved daughter. Never think otherwise. Hearing her mother's pleading and filled with love voice and seeing her tears made Diana's eyes start swimming in tears too. She leaned into her mother's touch and hugged her tightly once more. Though her heart had been shaken by these revelations, The love and respect she had for her mother only increased after learning the truth. That night, Hippolyta did not return to the island of paradise. That night, Wonder Woman, a 3,000 years old woman, a valiant and tough warrior, slept like a vulnerable little girl, curled up in her mother's embrace. In contrast, Hippolyta stayed awake for a long time, watching her daughter sleep. A gentle expression was on her face as she softly caressed Diana's head. The word immense did not do it justice. As he looked at the endless expanse of darkness ahead of him, he could not find a word in his vocabulary to describe its size. In truth, it was way larger than dozens of planetary systems put together, a darkness blacker than the darkest black. His eyes would have not been able to perceive its existence in the first place if it had not been for the accretion disks glowing at its edge. What is this? His voice was shaking. A brave and courageous man, someone who never backed down, someone who had dared to even fight against a god. That man, at that moment, was frozen. A primal fear beyond his reasoning gripped his heart. He could not breathe. In terror, he could not even look away. A thought came to his mind. This is the end. Alarms rang and many warnings appeared on the screen of his computer. The ship began to shake terribly because of the force pulling at it, dragging it away from its trajectory. Snapping out of his trance-like state, he grabbed the controls of the ship in panic and pulled on them, trying to steer the ship away manually. He pressed several buttons and all the engines of the ship blasted at full power. But for all his efforts, the only result was that the ship started shaking even harder, and then, with a loud bang, one of the engines superheated and exploded. Kurama. At his call, a yellow and red light came out of his body. He stood up from the pilot's seat and then squatted against the ship's floor. The yellow and red chakra increased in density around him to such a degree that his silhouette became blurry, almost indistinguishable. His legs pushed against the floor with all the power he was capable of, and he launched himself up like an unstoppable rocket. He broke through the reinforced special alloy that the outer walls of his spaceship were made of, straight into the outer space. Now! Blast it! Crimson red chakra burst from the soles of his feet, enveloping the several hundred feet long spaceship below. An enormous explosion boomed when the ship's main ion reactor blew up. That explosion did what the spaceship's engines could not achieve. It propelled him away violently, lessening the pulling force that had taken hold of his being. There was no sign of relief on his face. A tailed beast bomb started to take form in the palm of his hands, and it grew in size until it was as large as a football. But he did not throw it. Where could he have thrown it to? For millions of miles, there was nothing around him. Pressing his palms against it, the tailed beast bomb's spherical form was compressed to that of a plum. Then, it blew up and another violent explosion blasted him away. It was almost as powerful as a small nuclear bomb. In the vacuum of space, those two explosions hurled him to more than 1,000,000 miles away from his initial location. Not enough. It's not enough. Desperation threatened to overwhelm him. He felt like no matter how far he flew, he would not be able to escape. He could not escape from the intangible claws of the devouring demon that had grabbed a hold of him. A shadow clone appeared behind him. But the clone did not have the momentum that the two huge explosions had granted to the original body. In a blink of an eye, the original body had disappeared from the clone's sight. Despite the original body's crazy speed and momentum, it had still not been fast enough to escape the radius of the explosion that followed. The shadow clone killed itself by creating and detonating another tailed beast bomb in his hands, just so the shockwave of the explosion could blast away the original body even further. Terrible explosions with powers no less than that of nuclear bombs appeared like tiny suns as they lighted up, for a brief moment, the ever-present darkness of the void. The repeated shockwaves coming from them were enough to even pulverize some of his internal organs and make him cough up large amounts of blood. But after the explosion of nearly 10 Baiju Dama, consuming much of his chakra pool, his body gained such an astonishing momentum in the vacuum of space that he had almost reached the speed of light. It was a speed that no one could reach without the aid of a supernatural force protecting their being. With his body wrapped in a dense yellow and red chakra, he looked like a comet as he flew in desperation. But finally, he could feel it. The pulling force from behind was weakening. He was not far from his salvation, the event horizon. He woke up with a start. Had half of his body not been petrified, he would have jumped up to his feet. In his condition, he could only grab onto the bedsheets with his still working hand. He noticed that the sheets were soaked with his sweat. Closing his remaining eye, he tried to calm himself down. His heart was beating as if to jump out of his chest. Years had passed from the last time he had had that nightmare. But it was not just a mere dream. Out of the 3,381 missions that Naruto had taken over the past century as an intergalactic mercenary, he had completed 3,380. He had failed only one. It had happened when the events from his nightmare had taken place. A supermassive black hole located very far from the borders of the 3,600 sectors of the universe. It was the closest he had ever come to dying. It was the most terrified he had ever been of something. It was a fear that did not make sense because, normally, Naruto was not afraid of death. It was beyond his understanding, more than his mind could comprehend. 1 hour spent at the very edge of its gravitational pull's range had meant over 50 years in the world outside the event horizon. Though he had completed the actual bounty before the supermassive black hole's gravitation derailed his ship off its course, by the time he returned to show proof of his bounty's completion and collect his reward, the person who had issued the bounty had died of old age. That was why it was counted as a failure. 1 hour under the influence of that supermassive black hole had made him unaging, immortal. He had searched for information about black holes after surviving that incident. In this wide universe, there had been other people too who had stepped beyond the event horizon of a black hole and managed to escape and live to tell the tale. But he had never heard of someone becoming immortal as a result of it. He had also never heard of a black hole of that size before. The largest one recorded reached only the approximate size of a planetary system. To this day, he was convinced that it had not been a natural phenomenon. Someone, must have created that thing. To this day, Naruto had been left with a deep fear of the void. In front of that world-ending black hole, he felt insignificant. Old gods? New gods? What a joke. Who dares to call themselves a god in front of the void? You're awake. A girl's voice made him break out of his thoughts. When he felt the cool sensation of a wet cloth wiping the unpetrified part of his forehead, he opened his eye. A curtain of long red hair appeared in his sight. It was Coriander. A worried look could be seen in her green eyes. Are you okay? She asked, but she realized how stupid her question sounded given that he could not talk and that half of his body had been turned to stone, so she added, "Will you recover from this?" All Naruto could do was make a thumbs-up gesture with his hand. He could not write as he had done with Kyuubi because he did not know the Tamarinian language. Now this is weird, the girl said as she brought her face closer to him and sniffed. The bed and your clothes are wet from how much you sweated, but it doesn't smell. If he had not been petrified, Naruto would have chuckled at her antics. This girl is not right in the head. He thought, inwardly amused. Coriander took his unharmed hand in hers and squeezed it, but without putting too much force into it to not hurt him. She bowed her head and said, "I was scared and confused at first because I suspected the worst when you said my parents sent you to rescue me. I mean, they've been dead for years. I thought you were trying to trick me. But I want to thank you. You killed my captors. Your fox friend told me that you even killed the Pshins who have imprisoned and experimented on me for years. I have etched this gratitude deep in my heart. No matter when or where, I will always be ready to repay you for it. Thank you." Coriander was a little startled when Naruto pulled his hand free from her grasp. She was even more surprised when his hand landed on her head. His hand was heavy and his palm and fingers were rough with calluses from a lifetime of wielding weapons, but it brought her a sense of gentleness like she had not felt in almost a decade, from the time when she was a young child, before her parents sold her out as a slave. She found herself leaning into his touch, taking comfort in that gentle head pat. However, that moment did not last long. After a few seconds, his hand became still and his one eye closed. Still tired, he fell asleep. A planet reminiscent of a blue marble could vaguely be seen in the distance. Having just passed by planet Mars a few minutes ago, the Earth was now only 20 million miles away or so. Ever since she woke up, Coriander had tried to talk more with the owners of the ship. But the man was in terrible shape, bedridden and unconscious, while the talking fox appeared to be in an awfully bad mood, even worse than when they had just met and he hit her. Any attempt of her starting a conversation was shot down with a growl and a fierce glare from him. After the third time, the girl wisely decided to stay silent and let the angry fox have his peace and quiet. Nonetheless, the ship's destination was of great importance to her too, since she was aboard as well. When she realized that they were on their way back to Earth, she could not hold in her doubts and worries and said, "Why are we going back to Earth? Last time we went there they fought against me and they fought against your master too. They are not friendly." Kyuubi growled at her again. "Naruto is not my master. He is my little brother." Coriander recoiled at the anger in the fox's voice and stood silent for a while. "I'm sorry for my wrong assumption. Don't be angry at me anymore, please." The fox let out a low growl from his chest. "I'm not angry at you, but I'll get pissed for sure if you don't shut your trap for a moment. We're going to Earth for asylum. They are not bad people deep inside, they're just morons. But it's exactly because they're morons that they will protect us from others. Now that you know why we go there, please keep quiet. The Tamarinian princess made herself small and did not say anything else. In her mind, however, she wondered why was the fox so mean and angry at her all the time. Does he hate me? Or maybe he hates everyone? Or it could be that he's stressed because of his brother's condition? Kyubi was, indeed, stressed out and very worried because of Naruto's condition, but that was not the only reason for his irascibility. The main reason for his bad mood was the massive amount of natural energy he had absorbed. While he had not gotten ill from all the natural energy that Naruto had pumped into him, he was a chakra beast. He did not have a normal, biological body. It had certainly amplified his rage and violent tendencies. After all, it had been a crazy amount of natural energy, so much that he had become even stronger and more immense than the 10-tailed beast, his progenitor, a god. In comparison to Juubi, who was a mindless beast, Kyubi was handling his power much better, and he had absorbed so much chakra that he had become a planet-busting behemoth. In the present, although it took him all of his willpower to restrain his berserk emotions, he did keep himself somewhat calm and in control. But Coriander pestering him with questions was not helping his situation at all. That's why he snapped at her the way he did. It did not take long for the Amerration ship to reach the Earth and its moon. When they were about to enter the outer layer of Earth's exosphere, about 6,000 miles away from the planet, Kyubi spoke to the AI of the computer in the control room. Activate the stealth mode. Roger. Stealth mode will be activated in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stealth mode activated. Based on the remaining fuel, the stealth mode can be sustained for 20 minutes. The AI's clear voice sounded. A light flickered on the exterior of the ship and, after a few seconds, it became almost invisible. A vague distortion of the space was the only trace left of it. It was the perfect camouflage technology. That's how they had bypassed the Watchtower's radars and sensors 2 days ago as well when they came to capture Vandal Savage. The Amerration ship was about to enter the thermosphere of the planet when a very bright yellow light appeared seemingly out of nowhere and targeted it. Startled, Kyubi used 2 of his tails to abruptly steer the ship away, performing a role that would have made even a professional pilot proud, managing to just barely dodge the yellow light. His efforts proved to be in vain, however, when the yellow light turned around and targeted their ship again, like a homing missile. This time, it was impossible to dodge it. But Kyubi did not give up. One of his tails elongated and pressed a red button. Energy shield deployed. Shield capacity, 100%. Stealth mode deactivated. The AI announced. The fox growled in annoyance. The stealth mode being deactivated meant that the Justice League's watchtower would no doubt catch wind of their arrival, but it was still preferable to having their ship blown up by that weird yellow light missile. But the following scene greatly startled Kyubi. The yellow light passed through the energy shield unhindered and then even through the thick glass of the control room's window without as much as making a hole or causing any type of damage. It was as though it was immaterial. The yellow missile headed straight to Kyubi, who was in the pilot's seat. But now that it was right in front of his eyes and he could see it clearly, Kyubi said in disbelief, "What the hell?" It was a power ring. A yellow power ring belonging to the Yellow Lantern Corps, led by Sinestro. They were not as well known as the Green Lanterns, but they were still infamous enough for Kyubi to have heard of them in the past. The yellow power ring went straight to his right paw and enlarged enough that it fitted around it like a bracelet. An intense yellow light started to glow as it enveloped his body, and Kyubi heard a voice coming from the ring. "You have been chosen to wield a yellow power ring. Kyubi, the 9-tailed demon fox. You will be subjected to psychological and physical reconditioning. You will be transported to..." All the rage and anger that Kyubi had been bottling up until then exploded. "Don't screw with me," he roared, and a wave of crimson-red chakra burst out of his body. "Psychological reconditioning? You think you can enslave me? You think I'd let anyone ever control me again?" His size started to increase again and his entire body became covered in fire. The board of the ship and the supercomputer were melted in an instant and deafening alarms started ringing. The ship began to shake terribly because the computer that had been controlling everything was destroyed. The gravity generator stopped working and the atmospheric pressure in the ship started to decrease rapidly. The ship began to lose altitude at a breakneck speed, and it soon reached the lower layer of the thermosphere. Conflicting emotional resonance detected. Rage overpowering fear. Targeted sentient deemed unfit to. The voice coming from the ring abruptly stopped because, at that moment, the gorilla-sized 9-tailed fox smashed his fire-covered fists together. A crisp sound was heard and the yellow power ring was crushed into pieces. But QB did not let his rage cloud his mind any longer. Quickly getting a hold of himself, he turned and tried to grab the controls of the ship, except that there were no controls left to grab anymore. The entire board had been melted by his flames a few moments before. Just then, the ship began to shake even harder and the temperature rose at an alarming rate. They had entered the mesosphere. Their ship had caught on fire. Fucking hell. One disaster after another. QB cursed. He abandoned any hope of salvaging the ship. With no working computer and no controls to steer the ship while it was burning up from the friction with the atmosphere of the planet, not only that it was impossible to save the ship, but they would also be in danger of dying if they remained aboard when it collided against the Earth. Not him specifically, but the unconscious and half-turned to stone Naruto and the Tamarinian girl would definitely perish. He rushed out of the control room and ran straight to the living quarters. When he entered the bedroom, he saw Coriander protectively holding Naruto's kneeling statue-like body in her arms, to stop it from being smashed against the walls and the furniture as the ship was going down. Decisively, the now large fox wrapped two of his tails around the two of them and brought them closer to his body. A loud crash was heard when QB smashed his fist against the outer wall of the ship. Even despite his relatively small size at that moment, he was only as large as a silverback ape. His punch was so powerful that not only that it broke the wall, but the entire ship was smashed into several pieces. The three of them were hurled into the air, but with his 2 arms and 9 tails wrapped protectively around the unconscious and petrified Naruto and the Tamarinian princess, QB curled himself in a large ball of red fur, protecting them from all angles. Now, the ball of red fur started falling towards the ground like a meteorite. Wait! I can fly! Coriander shouted at the top of her lungs, trying to make herself heard over the intense winds and air pressure as they fell. QB's almost rabbit-like ears were not that long just for show. Though faintly, despite the roaring winds, he still heard what she said. He unfurled himself from his curled-up position, but he still kept 2 of his tails wrapped tightly around the 2 of them as they fell. A bright green light glowed in Coriander's eyes and around her hands, and her face became strained as she tried to stop their descent. What the hell, woman, you said you can fly. QB screamed when he saw that their falling speed was not decreasing at all. Coriander grabbed one of QB's large ears and yelled as loudly in it as she could. Make yourself smaller. You are too heavy. This brat. His ear was ringing now. He felt like wanting to smack her for what she had done. I'll definitely smack her when we get down. But in spite of his thoughts, he did return himself to his tiny form as a fox cub. Regardless, his arms and legs and his 9 tails still latched around Naruto's waist securely. He was preparing himself for the worst-case scenario. If the girl could still not stop them from falling, he would enlarge himself again and wrap Naruto in his tails protectively like before. For him, smashing against the ground from that altitude would be an annoyance at most. It was not enough to seriously hurt him. But he was worried about what the shock of their impact against the ground might do to Naruto while he was in his current state. For Naruto's sake, he preferred landing safely instead of making a crater in the ground with his body. Sure enough, after QB became a tiny fox cub, Coriander managed to stabilize themselves in the air easily. However, as they were currently in the mesosphere, it was extremely cold, way below the freezing temperature of the water. Holding the petrified form of the kneeling Naruto in her arms and the fox that was latching onto his waist with his tails like an octopus, Coriander dived headfirst towards the ground at a very high speed. But, as it was a controlled flight, QB did not worry. They were only around 20 miles above the ground, somewhere above the Indonesian archipelago, when a very large construct of green light in the form of a human hand stopped them in their flight. From behind them, a group of 5 people appeared, surrounding them from all sides. They were none other than Green Lantern, Superman, Hawkgirl, Martian Manhunter and Wonder Woman, the 5 that could fly out of the 7 founding members of the Justice League. And guys, this is the end. How you enjoyed. See you next time.